Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bosnail, Samson Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dal West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'll hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Oh, I just wanted to ask him if it was make-believe or real.
Well, they went really high up, right? That's what I hear.
What?
I think
The
if you
soccer
were a
team?
Glober and you watched,
No,
did you see it,
what do you
Steve?
call it? The Branson thing.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Is that fake or real, or is soccer fake or real?
Oh,
Which
come
one?
on. You're going to tell me it's all fixed again? It's probably fixed, Steve, because that soccer coach for England, he brings those two guys in like a minute left in the game. They haven't even worked up a sweat, and they're the ones that take two penalty kicks and they both missed. That was either bad coaching or, yeah, you're right, it's probably fixed.
But the Rocket, that was a complete joke, or whatever you want
What
to
do you
call
mean? They went up in the pictures.
that.
Yeah, they went up. Okay, so what? They went up higher back in the 60s. So what? The claim is it proves space. No, it doesn't. It's still an entropy violation. So who cares? They went up high in the sky. Whoopee-doo.
Yeah, but
That was
Nathan, I think you're
laughable.
right. What I think you're right though, because every now and then they'll do this. Because listening to my sports station today, these guys were talking about it, saying, but they were saying this. I don't understand how in 1969 went to the moon, and this is all we could do is fly high. So I think they're beginning to catch on. The population, that is.
I'm a lost for words. Doesn't matter how many times I have this conversation with you, Neil. I'm just going to give up.
Oh, I'm just telling you what they were saying. I'm reporting to you. They were saying that in 69 they went to the moon, and now all they can do is go high. So they're catching on.
Okay. What am I going to say next? You say it for me, Neil.
Space is fake.
No, not about space. About your perception of people's reality.
Oh, it doesn't affect. That's what are you going to say? Let's say it. Say it. Reprimand me.
I'm not going to reprimand you. I'm really appreciative that you bring this stuff to me because I don't watch it. You know, if it wasn't for Phuket Word making a video about it, I probably wouldn't have known. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things that I don't keep abreast of what's going on, and I need to hear it. But by the same token, the way you phrased it is to say the people are gonna catch on. Hey, 10th, Mr. Whistly Mike.
Good morning. What can I do? I'm just sitting here.
I hear what you're saying because I'm mentioning the people, that the regular populace. Well, I'm saying that a lot of them are going to start asking these questions like, hey, wait a second. we've supposedly gone further years ago, and technology is advancing, and all you're doing is taking people high up in the sky.
Yeah. Okay. So, in many ways, this is similar to arguing about whether or not rockets work in space. You can argue about whether or not he reached space. Yeah? Whether he's gone high enough to be in space. Whether or not he's capable of replicating the visits to space from the late 60s and 70s. You can talk about all those things all day long. However, all of those arguments are deliberately engineered for both sides to beg the question of space.
Yeah, I know that, but at a certain point, Nathan, they're gonna start putting two and two together. And then if this understanding that you can't have gas pressure without containment, just like it affected us, maybe they'll catch on. I don't know. I have hope for humanity.
Maybe they will, but most people like their prison. Most people like their cage. Most people like to be controlled. Most people like to be told. Most people don't like to go out and do research and figure out what's what. Most people appreciate someone else has done it for me, they're more intelligent than I, and I can just rely on them having done it better than I could. Most people want that, Neil. Now, if it was the case that people recognise tomorrow that the sky is not a vacuum, it's a violation of entropy law, does that mean that suddenly the people who are currently in a position to want or require to control the general populace would suddenly stop requiring to do that for whatever reason? No. So even if there was a paradigm shift, like in 1984 when he's torturing the guy saying it's not beyond our mathematicians to make the stars far or close. So they make the world flat, Neil, tomorrow. Does it change the control structure that we live in? No. Not in the slightest. Go ahead.
I said it could, though. You never know. It could change it, yeah.
No, it won't. Because most people, as much as I like to say that everyone's a special snowflake, most people are very similar in terms of their wants, needs, desires, and their apathy towards things like what we discuss.
Well, I can only look at the way I reacted to this when my brother first presented it to me. I mocked him, literally abused him for weeks until I just couldn't get around it anymore. So I don't know. Maybe it's so this lie is done so well that people defend it. And it can't be defended, but they will defend it. I know I did.
Yeah, and that's their bag. Obviously, I'm opening my doors, but I'm not going to go out proactively preaching it. Again, I'll say this, hand on heart, I've got a lot of admiration for the people who do. Good for you. But my attitude towards this is very different to that. Seems ironic as I run a debate on the subject. But nevertheless, my attitude towards it isn't, I'm not going to lie about my attitude towards it, which is to say that, short of when you go out into the general normie public, just kind of sitting back and laughing at the ludicrous nature of their behaviour, which is kind of what I do to keep myself sane, you're never going to change them. I just don't... I hate to be this sceptical, but I just don't think it's possible. One control structure will supersede another, and people always want to follow another man and his models. Doesn't matter if it's a model of the world they live in, or a model of society that they should live in, or the model of the money that they should be utilising. It doesn't matter. People want a model to follow. And there's always going to be another man that says, my model's the best model.
It's funny you say that about the model, because I just went on GEMS. I just checked in just to see what they were talking about. And there was some pilot on that was in Iraq. And he was saying that he went 14,000 feet up and he saw indications of curvature and things that he's seen that could not be seen on a flat model. So I just popped in and said, we don't have a model. And he's like, yeah. But, yeah, that's what you got on the other side.
Meanwhile, we don't have a geometric horizon. So when they go up and say that they can see curvature, they're talking about a geometric horizon that's bending at altitude. Yeah, we've debunked that though, haven't we?
Yes, that's correct.
Go on, 10th. I know you want to get a word in. You've been on and off mute the whole time.
I'm just trying to figure out why my mic is whistling. I'm not doing anything. Does it make the sound when I'm off or only when I'm on?
It's a standard thing with your mic, whatever you're using. It just does that.
Yeah, I've got family living with me, so I can't be on my Yeti. So I'm in my man cave with my old setup, my iPad and my earbuds with the mic attached to it.
Yeah, I don't know what's causing it. It's just one of those things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to comment on, being on the show as long as I've been, that your way of operating is you're a YouTuber first, and then you chose the flat Earth as a subject. And you're not in any way, shape, or form interested in convincing anyone or not. But that doesn't mean your listeners aren't. That doesn't mean Tommy, who used to be a Glober, who's now the flat earther, or John, didn't get affected by the topic that we're talking about. So it's not that so much the conversion factor, but the fact that if you put out truth, those that want to see it will see it, and they'll convert. It's really up to them. It's not up to us to force anyone to do anything, but we know that if we talk about it, it's going to start the seed that later gets watered, and then eventually that guy's either going to be staunch against it or say, you know what, I ran out of arguments, like Neil said, and then become a flat earther.
That's my point, and I'm going to call the sports show. One day I'm going to call them, and I'm going to start breaking it down for them. But a few years ago, somebody did come on and start talking about flat Earth, and they literally abused them. But I don't see that happening to me.
No, you can abuse a lot of people, Neil. We get it.
I'm sorry, I changed the word. They literally, what's the word I should use, Nathan? You told me the last time. Instead of that word, they literally berated him. They berated this flat earther to the point where I think he hung up. And it was a joke the whole show.
Well, it's that consensus bully. The bully has the consensus. Here, the bully is the pseudo space and the lies of NASA. So, if they admit it's flat, how come they didn't bring it up? How come this caller brought it up? We're going to look stupid, so let's berate them.
Yeah, well, that's what they were saying. Like, all the years of science, but this is before the Black Swan. But I'm going to call them one day.
Let's get something straight. All the years of science is what we're using to prove you can't have gas pressure without container. All the years of science is what we're using where you don't have a geometric horizon. They just are using the phrase.
If you do call them, Neil, the way I would pitch it, or the way I would try and get your frame of mind, is how I would try and frame my mind when I was trying to pitch something to somebody in sales. So you have to get them to be in the what's in it for me position. You have to find out what is in it for that person. What's the advantage to them? Either discussing it with you if they're reluctant to discuss it, or debating it if they do want to discuss it but they don't necessarily want to have a disagreement with you. Whatever it is that you're trying to get in that they're not wanting to do, then you've got to ask, or you've got them to ask, you've got to ask yourself, what is it that's in it for them? What do they get out of this? And if you can figure that out and pitch it with that in mind, you're much more likely to be successful. So just ask yourself, what's in it for them? You pitching flat Earth to them in any vein.
I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything in it for them, so that's not good for me, right?
Well, yeah, it's gonna fall on deaf ears then, isn't it?
Correct. But millions of people will hear it. They will hear it. Somebody will hear that.
No. That's what's in it for you. Don't immediately go into that. Yeah. A lot of failed salespeople. What's in it for me? Well, I get my commission. Yeah, indeed.
That's my
But
commission.
you've got to figure out what's in it for them. Now, everybody's got something that they want, Neil, and that's the skill. Figuring that out before you go with your size 12s, pounding your way in there.
11.
You get my point.
Yes, I do.
I was hoping that would launch into a discussion or your open-minded thinking about what could be in it for them, but clearly not. So obviously, certain people are wired a certain way, and they become salespeople.
My wife was talking to me, so when I'm mute. I got what you're saying, though. I got to try to find what's in it for them. I mean, what could be the benefit of them? I mean, truth is a benefit. I mean, they do like truth.
You're close, Neil.
That's right. Benefits, features, advantages, things that you can offer them that they may desire. However, if you pitch something to somebody that has no desire for the thing you're pitching, you're just going to get nowhere. Figure out what they want. I.e., are they your customer? I've got to put it in this language because this is how I've been trained in this regard.
Neil,
I'm here.
have you ever been lied to?
Of course.
Did you enjoy it when you found out that the person you trusted lied to you?
No, of course not. It's very offensive.
And is your reaction to people lying to you always disturbing, or do you just shirk it off if some people lie to you? Or is it just certain people that lie to you that get you mad?
No, when anybody lies to you, they're telling you that they think you're stupid because they think you're going to believe them.
I see. So why would a person lie to you about something, let's say subject matter, whatever?
I don't know. It depends on the situation.
But either case, you don't like it, right?
The case, you're calling me stupid. You think I'm stupid because you think I'm going to believe this lie you're telling me.
Wonderful. I want to share something with you. Now I'm going to use your own words. Now I'm going to use your own words against you.
Not bad. Food for thought, Neil.
Yeah, that was good. I got you.
Hey, Nathan, I got 3 slides up. Let's cover them if you got time.
Yeah. I think we've got about 10 minutes.
All right. Let me know when you got the first drawing up.
It's the first one, 75 degrees.
Yep. All right. So what we got here is one circle of equal altitude, as we've covered before with the sextant. When you sight a star, you try to get 3 of these to get a fix. But here's one isolated, just so you know what one looks like. So you can see the triangulation there. Anywhere around that circle, you have a 75-degree angle to that sun or star as depicted there, and it's directly over the geographical position of the Earth, so the zenith position. Okay, so now if you go to the second picture, you can see where we've got 3 of them, right? So as you can see here, with 3 of them, you've got the right angle sign there. So the star is directly over that place on the Earth, geographical position, also known as subpoint. And somewhere from the circle, depending if you're 75 degrees away or 50 degrees away, you get to draw that circle. And you're somewhere on that circle until you shoot 2 more stars and get that red dot, the fix. So now you got 3 stars with a fix. Now this was an interesting find, the last slide. Here's 3 responses to refraction error correction in sextant measurements. Mila says, let's assume that a position was measured by using 3 stars and they all agreed. Does it mean that refraction error could be excluded? Question mark. And this guy answers, you can eliminate refraction by measuring the altitudes of 3 stars. Now think about what he's saying there. you can eliminate refraction by measuring the altitudes of 3 stars. In fact, the problem is known as Gauss's theory 3 altitude problem. It is one of the famous problems of navigation. I found a paper online that gives a reasonable solution. And I clicked on that. It's like a 36-page PDF. So what's interesting is that there is no refraction from, if you go back to the slide before, like I've said before, refraction, looming, it doesn't matter, can never interfere with that baseline where you are to the zenith position where it is the GP of the star. That has to be one straight line. And then the other one has to be the angle, which in this case, we showed that one slide being 75 degrees. So you need 2 straight lines to get an angle. So no matter what your eyes are telling you, whatever, that's got to be flat in order to achieve an angle. But above 15 degrees, the horizon, they don't want, you can shoot the stars for navigation with very little problem with refraction because it's not in the lower part, say from 15 degrees down to 0, the baseline, where you got moisture in the air, all kinds of temperature differences, etc. But in the Nautical Almanac, there is a refraction table to make the adjustments, and it is so minute, and it's done by the arc minutes. So it is so minute of a problem that I've shown that one slide where he says that is, 1 or 2 arc minutes, you're only 1 or 2 miles off your destination. So I just can't wait for a baller to come in here and try to debunk the Sextant with refraction argument, because I can get them both ways. So I just want the audience to know that it's so minimal that the refraction table in the Nautical Almanac is used for light bending when they hit different densities, but it's so minute. It's like 1 to 2 miles difference at, I think it was 30 degrees siding. And guess what it is at 0, meaning 90, 0. No refraction when it's directly above your head.
Yeah, because the way you're actually triangulating that position, you've got to have a straight, flat bottom to do it with the triangle that you're going to be acquiring the GP of the star from, to then get another 2 and get your actual position in the middle of that circle. I'll just put the slide back up. So even if they say refraction, it's like, no, the principle that you're going to be employing to navigate relies upon you having a flat bottom. And if they say, oh, well, if there is a bit of refraction, now that's actual refraction, not 7/6 of a radius you presume and derive from an hour that you can't measure, but just if light is actually bending to a minor degree, negligible amount is how it's termed, I think you'll find 10th Man, then it makes no difference because that's not how you're going to be triangulating. You need that right angle. So in essence, you might be a bit less accurate to the tune of a couple of miles, but it really makes no difference, especially when you consider that these 3 circles could represent tens of thousands of square, flat area.
Precisely. Precisely. I got 2 more slides up for you if you have time. So circle of equal altitude, I put in there in the white lettering 50 nautical miles or 5,000 nautical miles. It must be flat. You can put any number there. Doesn't matter. You got to have that right angle there for triangulation. And if you get 3 of these, you get a fix. I mean, Sextant kills the globe. And then the next slide, this is from David Birch Navigation. Let's just go to the second paragraph because it just nails it there. Thus, with our sextants, we always measure a star height that is slightly too high. A starlight from some 30 degrees above the horizon will bend only some 1 to 2 arc minutes if uncorrected, yielding an error of some 1 to 2 nautical miles. But at lower angles, the correction can be twice that or more. At higher angles, it's less, being only half a mile or so at a 60 degree and 0 by definition for stars overhead. No refraction at the GP. And in order for you to get that GP to you, that needs to be a straight line.
Epic. Is that the last one?
Yeah, I'll do one more because this is the killer argument that I want everyone to know. I'll send it in a second.
Okay.
Let me get. Here we go. Got hundreds of these. Halfway there.
Okay.
All right, you have it?
Yep.
Okay, see that, ladies and gentlemen? That kills the globe right there. Any picture of divergent rays, and I've got hundreds, you can look them up yourself on the internet. Their concept has to have parallel lines of light, and it must be measured from the center of the Earth. In fact, the Nautical Almanac and all of these are already preset to be from the center of the Earth to the center of the sun, or center of the Earth, center of the moon. So, but it only works. It only works if light comes in parallel. The number one globe killer is the sun and how the light is seen from the sun. They say it's 93 million miles away. They need it to be 93 million miles away because they need that light coming in parallel rays or lines, whichever you prefer. However, all you got to do is look out and see that that sun is very close because light comes in divergent. And the whole system that they've set up, measurements from the center of the Earth, falls apart because they know they can't prove it from the surface of the Earth because of the arced surface. They need it to go to the center where they can form a 90 degree. But since that's a fallacy and a presupposition that we assume we live on a globe, like Eratosthenes assumed everything, and like today the pseudoscientists assume everything, they still need the sun to come in parallel to even give that argument a pair of legs. So bye-bye globe, the sun killed you.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Eli, who's joining middle of my intro, 10th Man, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Morning, morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Everyone in the Discord happy, all settled, ready for housekeeping?
Hello, hello, hello. Yes.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Excellent
Howdy
stuff.
ho, Winslows.
Say a quick hello to Arwin. Hello, Arwin.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Nope.
Crickets.
Bottom up concealment. It's diffraction, Nathan.
That's not Earth curve.
Well, they like to calculate as if it were.
They
Sorry.
can calculate it.
Sorry for all
Right.
these people who are out there currently talking about diffraction and talking about Rayleigh criterion and talking about angles. None of that's in Earth curve maths. It was what we used as a rebuttal to the original Isle of Man discussion about 3.5, 4 years ago. Yeah, you haven't got any perspective in your begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve maths fundies. Globe maths doesn't have perspective. The feet and inches value that's subscribed to a target does not change with distance. Angular sizes, that's apparent size, the size it appears, does change with distance. And it's given with an angular size that gets smaller when it gets further away. Feet and inches don't do that, and that's what you use in Earth curve maths. So for all of their detailing of what is essentially our argument about perspective, excluded from Earth curve maths, doesn't help them, it hinders them. They're idiots. They don't realise that their perspective hijacking maths doesn't include the very thing they're detailing to us.
Right, they need to misunderstand optics on purpose in order to reify their virtual curvature.
Yeah, and while they're doing it on a flat surface. Where else are they going to get an angle from, as detailed in the pre-show when going through the sextant? If you're going to acquire an angle to something and claim that you're measuring its angular size only to cherry pick out some feet and inches measurements and distances and drop values from a calculator that does not include them, if you're going to do that, yeah, Owen, you've got to actually account for perspective in your maths. That's all that matters. Not the fact that they've done it, because they're going to do it on a flat plane and then ignore it in the maths. So they need a flat plane to claim that they're dealing with angles. Now, at first, they claimed, oh, it's because that's how you do it, and now we're going to burn it as a flat Earth straw man. It's like, no, we've got very detailed explanations. Check out Life is Short in terms of how things in the distance perceive to get smaller, or are perceived to get smaller. Well, that's not just a case of calculating angular size. There's many, many factors that go into it. Lists and lists of stuff that you guys on the globe side detailed, with a column called R for globe, and a column with all sorts of other refractive effects, details of obstructions, weather conditions, not to mention angular resolution limits. All of these effects of perspective, foreshortening, you name it. There's all sorts of stuff you've got to take into account. But just to get the angle, for you to then later burn as a flat Earth straw man, you're going to be doing that on a flat surface, and it's the only way you can do it, which is why you've got to burn it as a flat Earth straw man. How else are you going to get the angle off a curve? You can't. It's nonsense, but things still work in reality, don't we? We can still measure angular sizes of things without any difficulty at all, because we are actually on a flat plane.
Nathan, when you conceived of your YouTube channel, you had options of any topic to make your YouTube channel about, but you chose this topic. Now, obviously, you chose it because you saw that it would be a very vigorous conversation between the two sides. And yet the one side that's supposed to be right, it can never give us a measurement. It's always a calculation. It only exists in the maths. It's pretty interesting that 99.9% of the Western world is just only in the maths.
Well, there's an indication of curvature. That's what a pilot said on Gem Panda show. There's indications of curvature.
He was talking about his windshield that was slightly bent.
Yeah, when they talk about indications of curvature from altitude, for example, if you looked outside of Richard Branson's recent high-altitude flight, the assertion that what you're seeing at the horizon is Earth curve has been debunked by the Black Swan. Not to mention the fact that they normally show it through a fisheye lens and it can go concave at any moment if they tilt the angle wrong. But nevertheless, that's a geometric physical sphere edge for a horizon that they're claiming they can see at altitude. The horizon is an Earth curve. It's the end of that argument. Meanwhile, we only have one horizon. The horizon in your begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator is physical and geometric. You know, it's claimed to block things, boats and buildings, feet and inches that don't change with distance. Being blocked by physical Earth curve edges at the horizon? Yeah, that's your physical horizon that we've debunked with the Black Swan. So saying I can get up high and see the horizon being Earth curve again, it's like, yeah, lest we forget that that's not a physical sphere edge anymore. So what are you seeing from altitude? You mean you can see the horizon? That's not Earth curve. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Don't be shy in Discord. Or be as shy as you like. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, no 15-degree movement of the Earth whatsoever. We are motionless. And still, it's so obvious. Just go stand and look around you. You ain't moving. Now, the sky and the things in the sky appear to be moving for sure. But that doesn't mean you're moving, because if you're moving, you would know. You know how you would know? It's called the Coriolis effect. Earth-based, that is.
Interesting.
Get up in a helicopter.
They claim it. They claim that's what happens. They claim things drift away at 15 degrees an hour because we turn beneath them. Of course, we don't see that.
Well, fine.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, good morning, John. Yeah, so why not prove it? Why not prove that claim? Let's get up in a helicopter, hover over one place, and wait for the next city or town to come under us. If the Earth is turning, that is exactly what's got to happen.
Yeah, that doesn't happen, though, because Earth's not turning. We're stationary.
Oh, my goodness. But when I look up, the stars are moving. So maybe they're just moving.
Yeah, but we're not turning beneath them because we'd notice Coriolis effect. We'd see things drifting away, like footballs when kicked from a ground as they leave the non-inertial claim to be spinning reference frame of a turning Earth. Neil deGrasse Tyson would assert, in line with the heliocentric rhetoric, that the ball appears to drift through the goal, curve through the goal, because Earth turned beneath it. Likewise, it's claimed that snipers' bullets will curve because when they leave the barrel of the gun, the Earth will continue to turn beneath them, causing you to appear to have a curved path of the bullet. And you'll have to track your target because it's claimed Earth's turning beneath the bullet. However, if Earth was turning beneath bullets and footballs, it would also be turning beneath helicopters, drones, hot air balloons, aeroplanes, and you if you jumped up and down. And you'd notice. We don't. We're not drifting. Nothing's drifting.
We
Earth's not
need to
turning.
set up this. Sorry, Nathan. We need to set up this debate though, like between like there's this hierarchy now, right? Like globers and anti-flat earthers, right? So we need to have this debate between the globers and the anti-flat earthers, like the ones that claim that we have two reference frames, like Mr. Smoking the Grass Tyson sits at his, on his couch and makes quick calculations as to how Earth is supposed to be rotating underneath football. But then you got the other guy, like, I don't know, No Psy Man Dan, who claims that our reference frames are ruined. Well, whose reference frames? Neil deGrasse Tyson's? The ones he just claimed? But did you ruin his reference frames or what? They need to have a debate, like, together. Work that out before they can come even here and approach us with this crap.
I wholeheartedly agree. There should be some distinction. So at the moment, you've got two camps. Half of the camp thinks that Bob Nodell has proved that Earth turned beneath the fixed spinning frame of a fibre optic gyroscope. That is a claim that Earth turned beneath it to cause drift. Now, the only way you can observe this drift is if you are attached to the spinning reference frame. Like if you are on a roundabout and you are spinning on the roundabout, you, spinning on a roundabout, can observe things seem to drift. Not because they actually drift, it's because you're turning beneath them. So in order to have this effect, you must be attached and turning beneath things that aren't attached. That's the only way to have this effect. So for it to be Coriolis, as asserted by Neil deGrasse Tyson, you must be observing a ball seem to curve through a goal because you're turning beneath the ball. So the effect is only going to be observable from the ground and is only going to be observable if and only if we are turning beneath things. So if we have Coriolis effect, we must observe us turning beneath hot air balloons at 15 degrees an hour. And we don't. So I'd like the anti-flat earthers who say, we wouldn't expect to see drift, it conserves momentum, pissing in the face of the assertion Neil deGrasse Tyson makes, that as we turn beneath things we observe them seem to drift, because they aren't attached and we are, to a spinning reference frame. Conservation of my ass! It's claimed we have drift. Now, anti-flat earthers, like the bastards, George and Ruhif and various other wank stains that are out there, that tell people that they need to have their jobs threatened because they don't understand how we don't have drift. We're conserving momentum. What's that? Conserving momentum in a trajectory of something that's only got an apparent deflection. It's only appearing to drift because I'm turning beneath it, but you want to tell us how it's conserving momentum? No, it's not conserving jack. It's only appearing to drift because we're claimed to turn beneath it. The fact that it doesn't drift doesn't mean it's conserving things. It means it doesn't drift, and it needs to prove we spin on an Earth that's turning beneath it. So you crackhead idiots that seem to think you can have people's jobs because of conservation momentum, flying in the face of a claim that we have drift, Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to be our citation for the globe claim. You have drift on a globe because you turn beneath things not attached. Can only be observed as we are spinning beneath things. What's that? You say we don't observe it because it conserves momentum? All right, so it doesn't demonstrate proof of spin then. Have his job, right? No, accept your pain. Accept your fight against the fact we don't have 15 degrees of drift observable on a turning Earth. Yeah, that's the reality, fundies. Lap it up. Shout out to Godzilla37, who says, this is not €6.99, or this is not €6.99, if you can think of it as €6.99. But it is $6.99. I don't understand your super chat.
He's talking about you can think of it as real money, or you can think of it not. I think that's what he's getting to.
Oh, it's not euros, it's dollars. I see. Thank you very much for the super chat, Godzilla. Really appreciate the support. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
None whatsoever. Beautiful light in the sky.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Well, not without R.
Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Hey, I was going to answer it.
Which one?
The molten iron core.
Ah, feel free.
Did they at what depth do they even claim it's the molten part supposed to start? And did they ever get there to confirm it in any way? That's my question.
Well,
Only if the
got-
core is about 6 miles deep, because they only got about 7 and change, so just a bit off. Sorry.
I think he's asking, in the paradigm, if you've got a 3959 radius, that's to the exact centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. From that centre point at 3959, how far out is the molten iron core, I think is what Arwen's asking. It isn't, it's just the model, they just made it up. But Arwen wants to know the rhetoric, right, Arwen?
Well, I remember this movie where they had this giant tungsten drill machine with people in it, and they kept digging down and down and down and incredibly far down, and then threw into the lava, and then eventually dug into this giant crystal cave or something, right? So what did they base that on?
Didn't they have to restart the core or something like that?
Sorry, is this an explanation, or are you pitching a movie plot? What's going on? Another shout out to Godzilla37. He says, that's 10th. Yeah, it was a typo. Should have been, but you can. My bad. You didn't have to super chat to say that, Godzilla, but thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
And how did they restart the core, Chocolate?
I don't know. Just remembering a bad movie.
It was a nuke. Well, what else? What else would they do?
Thank you. Isn't that the same thing Bruce Willis used on something else?
Yes, it's always nukes that are the solution.
Bruce Willis went the other way. He went to the second law of thermodynamics violation with drills to drill rocks
and blow up a core. He wasn't restarting a core. He was blowing it up from the inside. He made the ultimate sacrifice in Narnia. God, don't you know your movies?
Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a chemical reaction be a better thing for their core?
Chemical reaction? I don't know. They can make up any story they like.
What core?
What chemical reaction at that heat?
What heat?
Well,
Bring-
if it's
bring a
molten
match.
iron, it's gonna be pretty hot, right?
What molten iron?
The one claimed to be there.
Thank you. Finally, claimed. Well, if it was there and it was starting at 3959, we'd have Earth curve. But Black Swan took care of that.
Actually, the Earth curve not being there took care of the Earth curve not being there.
That's true.
And doesn't their molten lava have to travel through thousands of miles of cooling substance to
No.
get to the surface
No.
in their
that's a mis-
model?
No, that's a misconception. The plate tectonic activity at the Ring of Fire is what's causing those volcanic eruptions and the molten lava. It's the plate friction. I don't know if that's true. That's why I'm sort of hesitant about saying it. That's just the rhetoric, right? I'm just telling you what the rhetoric is. It's not coming up from the molten iron core. No.
You have plates on a ball.
So it's like high pressure pockets.
Yeah, just below the tectonic activity, though. It's not like it's claimed to be coming from massive pipes down at the core all the way up to the surface. Far from it.
You can have.
How do you have land moving all over the place when it's still attached to the land?
Well,
It happens really,
I'm
really,
just
really
curious-
slowly.
Oh, is that how?
Yeah.
Just so slow that you don't notice it? Is
Do
that,
you want a Pangea story or what? Is that what you're fishing for?
that's what I'm making fun of, yeah. So if you want to go into that.
Not
I
at
have
all.
another question.
They're
about-
just so
about
stories.
the-
Jackanory time. If you want to be Jackanory chocolate, you be my guest.
Arma's trying to get in the word here.
We've
Can
got
I?
stories to
I
tell.
had a question.
Got very important stories to make up about Pangea and plate tectonics and all sorts of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I had a question about plate tectonics, right?
Go ahead,
So
man.
It's claimed that, as you said, the lava doesn't come from the molten iron core slipping through. No, it's supposed to be like the friction and the pressure of these plates to create molten lava. So, have they ever demonstrated that just pressure and friction could create lava in any form? Has that ever been demonstrated in some kind of a physical process?
I don't know.
That just pressure,
Rub-
just friction could do that?
Rub your hands real fast. You feel heat, so that's what they're gonna say.
Do that
Yeah,
for
but is it enough heat to actually turn stone into lava?
Yeah,
That's
man.
my question.
Superman changed coal into a diamond, so yes.
Yeah, but he has laser eyes, so...
Nah, he did it with just his fists, man. Didn't involve lasers.
Oh, what? Right.
They have friction welding. I've seen that. That's a thing.
So if friction
Friction
welding, then
welding,
lava.
what?
Perfect logic.
Really? Friction weld? How does that work?
They also have arc welding, so there's your curve.
Yeah, but that's electric.
Nice one, 10.
Thank
I
you.
went too into the actual discussion. Yes, look, the validity of what is being claimed here isn't really open for discussion. There is no validity because they haven't dug below about 12 kilometres. So, no. How they describe it at hundreds of kilometres down is farcical beyond reason because they haven't got any evidence for it as far as I can ascertain. Now, we're just discussing what they claim in terms of the molten iron core at the moment, and we just want to I want to just focus on the fact that regardless of what is the cause of volcanoes, I don't know the answer to that, and maybe they do. Yeah, maybe that is correct. I don't know. I'm not going to poo-poo it as not being correct. I don't know. But I do know that even their rhetoric doesn't have the lava coming from the core. That's it. That's all I want focused on. Beyond that, I don't know the rest of their rhetoric. It's pretty critical. It's part of the nature of reality. But who's going to go out and survey it? Who's going to be the one that figures out how volcanoes work beyond what they already tell us?
Right. I'm just kind of puzzled that supposedly pressure would cause rock to melt like that when we know that, okay, there are super high pressure chambers and all that, specifically for industrial applications to make certain type of crystals or even diamond through sediment and bacterial stuff, right? So you can make a piece of carbon potentially into a diamond with extreme pressure. But how does that work with metal And does it melt under extreme pressure? All of these things are just puzzling to me.
Quite
Like,
right. But what's more fascinating to me is what we can actually observe. We can see that we live on what seems to be a living Earth. The ground itself is reproducing. Yeah? You can see in Hawaii pillow lava literally creating land before your very eyes. So they talk about these very long processes that we have and millions of years in terms of the development of the land and all of this sort of stuff. I think it's all nonsense. I think the processes are actually, in some instances, incredibly rapid, where we've been led to believe that they take a substantial period of time. Mainly because that's what we actually observe. We actually see it. And when we do, we don't necessarily focus on the contradictions of what they've told us about how the land has been developed or split apart or plate activity. And then you just see land coming out of the ground, forming, and then being very fertile. And you're like, oh, I see. So the ground's alive in some respects, metaphorically or otherwise.
And
Nothing
you
to
tell me
see here.
Earth's not a phenomenon.
It is a phenomenon. Something's happening. You could science that. Shout out to Mike
Yeah, when I said it the other
808.
day, you said it no.
Hold on. He just sends me a man yawning and waving, I think. Thank you very much for the super sticker, Mike 808.
I think that's a
That's what I
lemon
meant.
man.
That's what I meant the other day when I was asking: isn't Earth itself a phenomenon?
No, Earth itself is a concrete noun. If you just look at the ground, that's just that's as opposed to the ground coming out and being produced in the form of pillow lava. That's something actually happening, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I always like to think of the tree. Tree, concrete noun. Leaves falling off the tree, a phenomenon that you can study. Moving on. Do we get any evidence of R? I live in hope.
R got beat up already so many times.
In R, they used to trust. Rest in peace.
And although Arwin sort of cut it off, did we get distance to the sun covered? Anybody? Anybody at all?
I don't see it right now.
Assume radius. Assume another radius of light in sky. And assume. Just keep assuming. Just assume and assume and assume. There you go.
You know what I think really is universally weird is that when things are very misty and everything, and there's just clouds everywhere especially in the summertime, but still, I just cannot pinpoint where the daylight now is coming from. There's supposed to be a sun somewhere up there behind it, yet everything is lit up, and I don't get
Because
that.
it's over here.
But you should still, in between all of that, just see that on one side it should be lighter because that's where this massive light source is, right? I don't understand how things can lit up so universally without any kind of gradient in the light when it's that clouded during the day. I don't understand this.
It's diffusing the light. The clouds are acting as a diffuser. So if you Google search camera light reflector, it'll show you a piece of white, like a disc. Sometimes they put them on the front of a softbox. When you see those big umbrella looking things on a set. Well, that's a diffuser. The light is scattered more evenly. So that's why.
But how does it diffuse so evenly, throughout the entire visible dome of the sky? As
I
it
love
were,
it. I give
visually?
him the phenomenon if you like, and he immediately asks me for the cause of the effect. How the hell should I know?
Right. But that was my question. I'm
No,
just hoping maybe somebody could shed some light on this, pun
No,
intended.
you were asking why it didn't appear as a gradiated light in terms of having it fade out to black or whatever. Well, that's because it's very diffuse. That's all it is. But why is it diffusing? Oh, okay. Diffusion is an entropic effect. So here we go. Ask me for the cause again. Let's see how quickly you can put me on the spot and admit I don't know. I don't.
I think I can help Art. I could help Arvin. This question will be looming for quite a while.
Oh my god.
No, only things in relation to the horizon looms. So,
And you missed the greatest pun of all right there.
no, I
He's into it.
misunderstood it on purpose.
Arwen missing the
Yeah,
pun
I
is
think
more.
he did.
Arwen missing the pun is almost as funny as the pun most of the time, though.
Thank you.
No, I think it was a counter pun actually. I think Arwen did get the pun, but he made a reverse pun with the same word but different word.
Right, but
Very
still,
very
my
bright of him. Very bright of him to do so.
Okay, look, there's many
Very
my
complexities.
question still stands.
Many
though.
complexities to this pun, but we are going to move on with housekeeping and ask any scientific evidence of gravity.
Ooh.
What's that?
Anyone in Discord? What's gravity?
Wait,
Help us out.
wait, I think I know. I think I know what gravity is. It's that thing that's supposed to be negated after you reach a certain height, right? And then they said, "Oh, look, the rocket's stopping now, so that means they're now going to unbuckle and experience 0 G and float around," even though they didn't show any of that live until they descended again.
They're not just performing a parabolic maneuver like the vomit comet when they do that. Is that not all
Yeah,
they
that's
do?
all it was.
I
It's
mean,
just a
Yeah,
big
but they
parabolic.
said that the floatiness would.
They didn't show
hold
that
on.
live?
No,
Or
yeah.
quote unquote live?
hold on.
No, hold on. Let me put it down, please, in a detail, right? So they claimed, because I saw it live, like I saw the show on the channel. They said no, they're going to unbuckle as soon as the rocket stops, but that was still in the upward trajectory, right? And I thought, wait, that's not how that works.
Oh
And
yes,
they didn't show it. They didn't. They just said they were doing it, and they didn't show them unbuckling
Hold on.
when they were still going upwards.
Angel
I thought
HD.
that stood out to me.
Thank you. Angel HD, did you want to add something?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I had my mic open, and I really apologize.
No, it's okay. I just didn't want to miss it if you wanted to add
It's
something.
my first time. It's my first time here, so that's why I was trying to figure it out how it works.
It's okay. Pleasure to have you. Okay, so just so if this is all watched at a later date, we're currently talking about the Richard Branson. What's the name of it? Virgin Galactic. Am I correct in the title?
Yeah.
Virgin Galactic.
Yes.
So he's done I've forgotten what the term is for it, but it's something like a drop launch. They take a plane up to a certain altitude with a plane attached to its belly that can't do that particular function. Then they drop it going high speed and then carry on the rest of the journey to a higher altitude in this specially adapted plane. They've been doing this for a long time. They did it back in the 60s. To my knowledge, they went even higher in the 60s. Nevertheless, this is not new technology, and he's been talking about it for some time. A trip to very high altitude. Good for him. However, the claim that he's reached the edge of space or has reached space or any of those claims are nonsense. It doesn't make any difference to our debunking of the claim that the sky is a vacuum called outer space. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill that space. So any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container, then we'll talk about Branson and his space, in quotes, missions.
Well, according to some ballers, gravity is supposed to keep it in, but when you go up high, then that gravity ends and there's still gas there. So that always confused me. Seems kind of
See the
contradictory.
previous question where we asked what gravity was and there was no response to that?
Right.
I know.
Gravity's not overcoming entropy. So entropy law would dictate that the gas, which is moving at a high velocity, will just keep moving in that direction until it strikes another particle of gas or the walls of its container or anything else. And when it does, it will bounce off it with an elastic collision and just go in the opposite direction. So that's what gas does. So if we had a sky vacuum and available volume for the gas to fill, the gas would travel in that direction and keep going. Or to put it another way, we would never develop gas pressure in the first place. Just for those of you who say, well, how come we've got a gas pressure gradient? Well, a gas pressure gradient being a delta of gas pressure which we'd never achieve in the first place if the sky was a vacuum. It would just be an availability of volume for the gas to fill, and it would have filled it already. Ergo, the sky vacuum isn't real regardless of Branson's high altitude flights. matters not to the debunking and second law of thermodynamics violation that is a sky vacuum.
I have a question about gas behavior.
Sure, go ahead.
I went home to visit my family, and my brother was talking about how they had to install carbon monoxide detectors in my parents' cottage, and he was saying that it should be on the bottom. And then he said saying that, and I thought I was pretty versed because I visit you guys so often and I wanted to make sure I was right. He said that in a container, if you introduce two separate gases, like one that's heavier than the other, that they will separate, and the heavier gas will sit on the bottom and the lighter at the top. And I was pretty sure I was right, but I was saying no, they'll mix because of the entropy. But I wanted to check in with you guys and see if that's correct.
No, that is correct. So you can take a more extreme example, which they use with a man-made gas called sulfur hexafluoride, and they pump it into a fish tank and show that it would sink to the bottom because it's an inert gas, i.e. they say, quote-unquote, heavy gas, right? Well, it doesn't change the fact that if you came out an hour later after they've done the demonstration and floated the tinfoil boat on the gas, there's gaps between those gases. And the entropy, the proportionality of the time it will take for that gas to diffuse into the available volume that it has, is directly proportional to the amount of time. So over time, for 2 or 3 minutes you can get a very heavy, in quotes, gas to be in a fish tank for you to float something on it. But over time, with entropy being the thing that's going to increase over that period, the gas will just diffuse into the available volume. It'll fill the available volume. It'll diffuse. That's what gas does, because it's not bonded. So there's no barrier to stop any gas around it entering between the gaps. And that's precisely what happens over time. Now, you can delay that process of entropy. You can slow it down, but it's always going to be moving in one direction. So you can make a more extreme example. You can put butane in a very long pipe and then have a very small hole at the top of it and say, look, there's still butane in there at pressure. You go, yeah. And tomorrow there won't be, because over time, instead of hitting the walls and then hitting a gas particle and then bouncing down the pipe, some of the particles at the top bounce off the pipe and then go through the hole. And the more time that elapses, the more goes through the hole. That's entropy.
Awesome, thanks.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Strictly in the scientific terms, no.
Not yet. I think they never will, though, because as soon as they actually abide by the scientific method even once, then suddenly they have that thing staring at them in their past. Like, yeah, we did it once. That means that we could do it again. So I think they'd like to avoid it at all costs. So they just can keep up their just so story system.
It's funny though, the people who make all their money developing their fantasies in that place say they don't have any idea what the scientific method is or uses it or understands it. It's leaps of logic, guesswork, seat of the pants. And these are the people that get paid to tell us what's going on in there. Yeah. Great, isn't it?
Where could I find the best definition for the scientific method to show someone?
I don't know. I don't have any. I very rarely cite anything. Anybody got a citation for him? I don't have one. Clearly not.
Yeah, I could dig
Yeah,
one
because
up.
I was arguing with
It would
Hold
take
on.
I
me
was
a
arguing
few,
with my
but
family
Hold on,
about
hold
that
on,
too.
hold on. You're getting a response. Go ahead, Chocolate.
no, I could dig some up for you. Can't name them offhand.
Yeah,
but
that'd be
yeah.
awesome. That'd be awesome. Like one that normies would be like, oh, that's a good source, you know? Because if I just did Wikipedia,
I'm going to give you.
Yeah, I got you.
Well,
What
just while you're posting that to him, the scientific method elucidates the cause of a natural phenomena by way of systematic, hypothesis-based experimentation. End quote, Nathan Oakley, 2021. That's my definition
That's a good one.
I'll break that down. Elucidation. That would be to bring light to the cause, what causes something, of a natural phenomena, something occurring, an event, thank you very much from the chat, Paula, that occurs in nature. So the cause of an effect. That's what the scientific method deals with. It does so by way of systematic, that means repeated, hypothesis-based, that would be to establish the cause, that's your independent variable, of the effect, naturally occurring phenomena, and the null, the cause you assume, and the antithesis of your prediction that it will cause it. That is to say, it won't cause it. That's your null hypothesis. So based on that, you perform systematic experimentation to validate either the null or the alternative, one of which will be, write this down, fundies, proven. The sole purpose is to prove the hypothesis, and upon experimentation, you prove the null or prove the alternative. One or other will be proven. They are mutually exclusive. They cannot both be simultaneously true. A cannot cause B and A cannot not cause B. You can't have it both ways. It can't simultaneously be true that something causes something and doesn't cause something. Hence, one or other is proven. That's the method of science. It's empirical because of the null. One or other's proven. You can invalidate one or other and will invalidate one or the other upon experimentation with a valid hypothesis. Hope that helps.
It does, and it's interesting because I visited my family, and some of my family wouldn't visit me. Like I went back home, and my family lives on a Great Lake. They live on Lake Erie. I don't know if you know about the Great Lakes, but like it's basically an ocean of fresh water. Anyways, certain members of my family, they wouldn't visit me because I hadn't had a certain something injected into me. And then my mom was like saying, well, what is the science behind this? Like, why can't they visit you? And I was trying to tell them, this isn't science. What you're talking about, that's not science. And I was trying to go over that. And and my dad, he works for a pharmaceutical company. He's like, tell me it is science. And I'm like, no, this is what science is. I basically said exactly what you said. And I wanted to cite what science is to them. And it just caused a big problem. Like my family wouldn't visit me. My family lives on a lake. It's clearly flat. They live on Lake Erie. You can look from left to right. And another thing I think about is why, if it's curved, I can see like from left to right, you can see hundreds of miles left to right. So there should be a curve left to right. There's none.
Careful. Very good until you said should be a curve. Why should there be? Because they say there should be a physical geometric sphere edge horizon that bends. No, there shouldn't be. We shouldn't expect to see curve, and when we're not seeing it, it's not that we were expecting to and haven't. We just see things with our eyes, and we do have a horizon. Meanwhile, they have a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon, which only exists in their maths. That doesn't mean that we should be expecting to see the maths-only based horizon that they see. That's their problem, and I'm going to bang this drum as much as I can, flat earthers. We don't see, quote, too far. Yeah, that's nonsense. We just see what we see. There's no reason to make apologies for seeing what you see in a camera. It's not too far. You're just stuck in a paradigm you're still struggling to relinquish if you say that. Too far? No. The globe model says there should be a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. So what? Does it mean that when it's not there, you've seen too far? No, it just means that their assertions are wrong. What you see is merely what you see, has sod all to do with what the globe model says you should see. So, is there any more? Does anyone want to cover the Richard Branson thing anymore, or have we basically covered that? Because we were very brief, mainly because we can rip it to pieces with about 3 sentences.
I'll share something on that. There was a ceremony afterwards with that astronaut pinning a little pin that looked like the actual Virgin Galactic ship that they were on, that was launched at high altitude, on each of the people up there. And at the end, he would say their name, and then he'd say astronaut, Richard Branson, astronaut, and then that lady, astronaut. And this is an astronaut pinning this pin on their flight jacket. Such a show. The crowd, the champagne, the spraying of the champagne. All it was a high altitude flight. I mean, the people who fall for this is amazing. When you
was that
see,
a pun? Fall for this? As they're in a parabolic maneuver?
well, good one. I wasn't saying it for that, but thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just like watching those high fives and jumping around when they do a cameo shot of the people at mission control on some of these other so-called rocket launches. I mean, it's so phony. It's a bunch of young people who are just paid to be gleeful and excited. They have no idea what they're talking about.
But it is exciting. I just want to disagree with you a little bit. And that is to say that when Dilly Gill, I'll shout this channel out first, Dilly Gill, DILLYGILL, 2 words, go and subscribe today for his dissection of space travel and NASA and all their phony baloney footage that they put out, labelled as, quote, crapovision by Dilly Gill. So check him out. He's one of my favourite YouTubers, actually, Dilly Gill. I should shout him out a lot more than I do. Anyway, he pulls apart their fake footage that's done behind green screens, done on trapeze, high wire, and shows the fakery and how it's done. But he also takes apart some of the older footage where they do parabolic manoeuvres and are capable of seeming to be in what they call 0G. I don't know if we'll cover whether or not 0G is actually a bastardization of the 1G versus 0G when you're falling, but we won't cover that now. The point is that when those particular quote-unquote astronauts were interviewed about their experiences in quote-unquote space, they were a lot more enthusiastic about their delivery, about the experience, about what space was when they'd been on the Vomit Comet. Now, Dilly Gill is he puts a very convincing argument, actually, that the shuttle is actually just another Vomit Comet. And it's designed the way it is because it's a much more efficient Vomit Comet. It can do it at a lower angle and get longer times of slightly less looking 0G, sort of half G or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, they can pull it off for longer in that particular vehicle, and it makes sense. It's certainly something that they send up and bring down, so why wouldn't they be doing those shots in there? He makes a very good case for it. That aside, their discussions with the press and the discussions with the ground control and all those sorts of things were far more enthusiastic when they'd experienced a parabolic maneuver and weightlessness, effectively, because from their reference point, as they're falling through the sky and the thing around them's falling with them, they're feeling like they're floating on air, right? They're actually descending at a rapid rate along with the thing around them, but that's not how it seemed when you don't have any windows to reference, right? I'm sure if you did have windows, it would be absolutely terrifying. But there we go, that's a different issue as well. Now, I get to my point finally after that long preamble. When you send a member of the public who's paying up for an experience of space, what do they want to see? They want to see the horizon, because in their mind it's an Earth curve edge. They want to see the black sky, because in their mind it's a sky vacuum. And they want to float. Well, Branson can deliver all of those things. Wonderful.
And the zodiacal lights.
And there's a what?
The zodiacal lights. That's what they want to see up there, Nathan.
The what light?
Have you watched that Don Pettit video?
No, I don't watch any of this stuff. That's why I don't know what you're talking about. You'll have to break it down to me.
No, it's just a funny clip. I think I'll find it and send it off to you.
Okay. But yeah, they're being sold on an idea that they already know from past experience when doing it with the astronauts. Got a very, very positive reaction from them. Instead of looking like they've just found a turd in their cornflakes, like the return from the moon landing guys. Neil Armstrong is a bloody morose while he's talking about it. Looks like he's just experienced a death in the family. Then you cut to the ones that experienced a bit of weightlessness in a parabolic manoeuvre, and, they've been throwing bits of food around and actually floating. They're far more keen and enthusiastic to talk about how wonderful space is after just doing a parabolic manoeuvre. Now, don't get me wrong, the public are led to believe that they're doing those things out in space, whilst begging the question of an orbit falling around a sphere Earth. But it doesn't matter. Ultimately speaking, they came back with much more positive details of what they were doing. Now, in terms of the public perception, I think it's been managed beautifully by Branson. Now he's actually done it, which is to say that he sent them up, given them an experience. He hasn't really hidden it. He was always very, from memory, it's quite a long time ago when he first brought this out, probably in the 90s. I can't remember. Anyway, he was quite clear that you're just going to go up quite high and come back down again, like an elevator. And at the time, before I was a flat earther, I was like, that's a bit crap, isn't it? But nevertheless, good for you. I'm sure you'll make your millions with people paying for it. Now he's actually doing it. People will pay for it. And they will perceive an Earth curve edge horizon that they've got a reification fallacy of. They will experience a black sky that they'll automatically reify into a sky vacuum. And they will float in a plane that's descending at a given rate in a parabolic manoeuvre. I mean, that's win-win for them. I think this is an absolutely marvellous bit of brainwashing. Because all the public members of the public that can say, I've been to space, and in the back of their mind they know they've only been to the edge of space according to Branson, but that doesn't matter, right? Edge of space is good enough. And that's what they'll punt out there. Just brainwashes everyone that little bit more. I think it's genius. From the globe side, I'm in admiration for the heliocentric deception and always have been, and this is just another arm of it.
I'm coming from a different viewpoint. When I saw NASA at its beginning in the 60s, it was guys with glasses on, pocket protectors with 3 pins, white shirt, black tie. I mean, just in front of some archaic computer screen. And it was some sense of like, this is engineering at its highest feat. Today, if you just go look at any one of these things, whether it's SpaceX or this one, the interviewers and the people are like in their 20s, they're googly-eyed. I'm observing all the
It
other
looks like a
things.
Nickelodeon show.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, Chocolate. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
I know. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, this is supposed to be serious?
Other
This is supposed to
people
be
are
like
starting to get
this
annoyed.
fantastic industry? The industry that goes backwards in technology. This the same one? You know, off topic real quick, I wanted to mention, because I was listening to, not to bring up politics, but I was listening to Donald Trump Jr. Talking at the CPAC the other day, right? And just real flippantly during his little speech, he said something that struck my ears. He started talking about, I think, Florida something, and how far he could see at one point. And he said, you know, it's Florida, it's flat. There's like, 6 inches of elevation change within like a 20-mile area. Said that real flippantly, just, kept moving on, didn't focus on it. And I just stopped, I was like, oh yeah? It's a bit of a problem, isn't it, though? If you got 6 inches of elevation change in 20-mile area, where's the 8 inch per mile square, bud? What's going on?
I'm going to do a proper shout out for Dilly Gill, as somebody in the chat was like, is it Dilly Gilly? No, it's not. It's Dilly, D-I-L-L-Y, G-I-L-L, 2 words. Go and subscribe today. His videos are amazing. They're like a real highlight of my day when he releases them, and I tell him so. So I'll immediately sit and watch through the entire thing, probably twice, to pick up on all the various different things that he's putting down. But yeah, go and check him out. I've just put a link in the live stream chat. So if you're watching this after the fact, just open up the live stream chat and you'll see the link to Dilly Gill's channel going by. And the video that I've spammed, or haven't spammed, I've just put one link, but I will spam it, is NASA's most beloved fraud. And it's just part 3 of that particular video series. But it's got others like the shuttle is a zero-G plane and various other different aspects that he covers. But he's quite dry, British guy. But I find him very, very funny. So, I don't know, it's regardless of his humour, which is totally irrelevant, his subject matter is right on point. He does a lot of research. Yeah, very, very good YouTuber. So check him out. That's Dilly Gill, D-I-L-L-Y-G-I-L-L. Subscribe today.
On the back of Chocolate's statement, remember Chocolate, a long time ago, they would use the state of Kansas and how flat the state of Kansas was?
Yeah.
I think it was like 400 miles of just pancake.
But funny thing was, he was comparing it to Texas, because I think he was in Texas in that speech. And he was comparing it to when he's been in Florida. And he's like, oh, Florida. It's flat like Florida, you know. It's like there's 6 inches of elevation within 20 miles. And then just kept blah, 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 moving on. And obviously, I heard that. I'm like, that's a hell of a statement. Somebody who probably doesn't believe you live in a flat, stationary Earth. But anyway, it's crazy how they just throw that in. They don't even know. You know, it's like the guy reminds me of the cab driver who was just like, "Oh man, the water was so flat, beautiful." Yeah, it's because it's flat. No, it's not. It's not flat. It's that type of thing. I love it.
Well, I was talking to a few people this weekend, and I said to this one guy, I said, "You do know we live in some sort of a matrix, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I go, "What do you think I meant by that?" And a long pause. And then he says, "Well, basically, you're saying that we've been lied to about things." And I said, "Yeah, exactly." And then I left it there at that moment, but I'll see him again.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta drop that seed.
Sleeping Warrior's got a similar story about being at the Isle of Man, where he's speaking to one of the locals about seeing the Isle of Man. And after the guy's given a very lengthy explanation of seeing it and how flat it is between there and here, etc., Anthony Riley, Sleeping Warrior, drops it on him. It's like, well, you realise that's because it's flat, right? And he gets a similar reaction. Right, no, obviously that's the curve of the Earth and that. It's like you just told me how flat it is.
That's the thing, right? You let them talk for a few minutes. You don't tell them immediately. You let them. I let the cab driver go for like, it must have been 10 minutes. Like, he was very talkative. I'm not usually a talker like that when I'm in cabs and stuff, but he wanted to go, and apparently he wanted to share his story with me. So he told me how beautiful this lake was. The water was flat. You could see forever. His words. You could see forever. The flat. Oh my God, it's so flat. Water, beautiful. That's because it's flat. No. No, it's not that. It's
Flat forever, but it's not flat forever.
until you heard it's flat from somebody else.
But that's his
No,
pain.
it's not flat.
I mean, what you're describing there is the essence of cognitive dissonance, isn't it? That is cognitive dissonance right there. It's flat. It's really flat. You can see forever. The water was so flat and level. Yeah, but that's because it's flat. No, it's not. It's curved.
Exactly. That is cognitive pain right there. Yeah. What's sad was the way he was talking. Is I knew me saying that would do that to him. I knew I was gonna get that reaction, but I did it anyway because I
Why
had
not?
to.
What the hell? It's only a cabbie. Sorry, Mr. Uber driver, you've had your day ruined. You've been sent into a very heavy dose of cognitive dissonance. Now I'm going to leave you be. Bye-bye.
That's the first time the guy in the back seat drove him crazy.
But this is the thing, isn't it? The Earth is obviously and observably and measurably flat. It's navigated flat, built on flat, appears to be flat, and your cabbie driver is telling you how flat it is. So it's not a stretch when you say it's flat, other than you've been programmed to believe that it isn't what you actually observe. Now, when it comes to actually measuring it, and we debunk the very tools they use to assert it, in circumstances that most general members of the public wouldn't understand at first brush. They just wouldn't get it if you shoved an Earth curve maths calculator in front of them. I didn't get it. And I'm not saying, oh, well, everyone's dumb and therefore, because I didn't get it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you've got to figure out what it's actually doing first, right? And if you don't know, you don't know. You're just like, what's this? Earth curve maths? Do you immediately go, well, because it says Earth curve maths, they're obviously begging the question with an R value and taking tangent points to a geometric horizon and calculating dip angles with feet and inches values that don't change. You don't know any of that stuff when you first come across it.
But there's levels to this shit, right? That's when, at that point, when you start realizing, oh, we see too far compared to what I'm told, compared to this model, compared to this math. that's when I think that's, it's sort of okay. But then when you realize that, no, that's just the model, that's not the actual reality we live in, then it's like, no, we don't see too far. We just see as far as we can on that particular day at that particular time.
I was going to
That's
say,
it.
the programming is interesting because as they grow up through the school system, they're programmed with the heliocentric model. And then like in Chocolate's story and Anthony's story, all of a sudden you make a little dent in that programming and they get very defensive because it's like, wait a minute, that's not what I was told all my life. This is what it is. Yeah, but didn't I just say it was all flat? I could see forever. Now, how could that be? And so that cognitive dissonance kicks in, but it's like a person who has the ability to think for themselves to this point hasn't. And then when you bring up a little scenario like that, it's the first time they have to choose. Like, wait a minute, I did just say it's all flat, but then at the same time, it's got to be curved. Oh, my head hurts.
Indeed. Just a quick shout out to Retro Bill. He says, FTFE shouted out Nathan and Sleeping Warrior in his latest debate on Modern Day Debate Channel. Bless his cotton socks. Isn't that kind of him? How appreciative I am of any advert from anybody ever. Thank you very much, Craig, for the advert. With that, and thanks to Retro Bill more importantly for the super chat, but with that I will say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Maybe they're debating each other.
Yeah, I think they took your advice there. We'll take whoever comes on top. How's that? Whoever wins that debate.
As the live stream was ending, I noticed in the chat that they were pointing out the numbers going all over the place, so it's obviously not just my end. Do you remember when I highlighted that the numbers for the live stream were just jumping all over the place, like plus 50, minus 50? Yeah. They were doing that in the live stream, so there's a few people going, look at the numbers, just pointing out the numbers were jumping all over the place. And as I was watching them, I'm like, okay, so it says there's 110, now it says there's 150, now there's 120, etc., etc. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
So no one in chat brave enough to come on and discuss this in the after show?
Yes, there are ballers in there.
All right, here's an offer to any baller in chat. Is the horizon Earth curve? Can we get at least that answer? Is the horizon the physical Earth curve that blocks the bottoms of boats and buildings? We just need one question answered. I know it's hard to defend the ball from now on since you know everything, but at least post it in chat. We can read it. You don't have to come on and hurt yourself by talking about the globe model.
Hold on a sec. Go on,
I think that's the biggest objection with the black swan, is that they're not understanding the horizon is meant to be where the curvature starts. They now want to allocate this horizon to some imaginary point. Can be anywhere, but it's like you say, they have to answer that question first. Do they understand that horizon line is their belief where the Earth curve begins?
Yeah, it's marked with an X, labelled horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, geometric, physically obscuring things, in the maths.
I think that's the point of the pain that they've reached. that now some of them will tell us that, oh, I've never heard anyone claim the horizon's Earth curve.
Yes, a useful opportunity to distinguish between globe believers. Now, a globe believer, regardless of whether or not they understand the globe mathematics, appreciates that boats are going over a physical Earth curve edge. Right? Boats over the horizon? Yeah? That's what your globe believer understands the world to be. The horizon is a physical sphere edge for boats to go over and to block buildings in the distance. Yeah? Remember that, fundies? Anyway, upon realising that you don't have a physical geometric sphere edge for horizon, that would be when you come here, you then have to transition into this limbo world of anti-flat Earth where you declare that nobody's claiming the horizon's Earth curve to block boats. That's an anti-flat Earth position. That's what you have to do if you've been debunked by us. Suddenly claim that nobody's claiming the horizon is Earth curve, even though it's in the maths, and claimed to be blocking boats and buildings by globe believers, but denied as even being in existence by anti-flat Earthers.
And how they've gone to the whole refraction
in
argument.
the picture.
Hold on, Chocolate. Just one sec.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
man.
Solo.
Sorry, Chocolate. Just how they've gone to the whole refraction side of things, that the horizon is apparent, and don't we flat earthers know that that's just an apparent location, and that's only what we've been telling them for 4 years, that it's not a physical location, it's an optical phenomenon that occurs in your eye, not a physical ball earth edge. But for them to be throwing it back at us now, saying that we're the ones denying atmospheric refraction and all this, it's so ludicrous.
Yeah, their refraction needs R now, though, doesn't it? So they've got terrestrial refraction in standard form, otherwise known as standard refraction, 7/6 of the radius. It's atmosphere, the light bending through the atmosphere, sphere-shaped air. So it begs the question of sphere-shaped air, something that's not possible. You don't have bendy air, it's just going to fill whatever volume it's got. It doesn't bend, it's unbonded, it's nonsense. Nevertheless, their sphery bendy air has got a standard rate of refraction that uses an R value, and they can't get it anymore. I like how they've
Baller was
started
telling
to...
us you can use 7/6R to find R.
Yeah, you need 7/6R assumptions of an R value that you can't measure because you've refracted the horizon to get the R value to move the horizon into a position where it's no longer capable of being measured. That's perfectly acceptable and reasonable as an anti-flat earther.
Say that again. Say that again. The baller said you can use 7. Go say it one more time.
They need to move the horizon with a value that's derived from the horizon. Therefore, they assert that we should accept that the non-physical geometric horizon, arbitrarily only appearing in the maths, is a derivative of the apparent, that would mean you can see it, horizon, based on an R value that can no longer be measured. So if you're deriving a refraction value through bendy sphere-shaped air with a positional value that's taken from a geometric horizon to derive R, you can't utilise it if you've moved it. So if you move the horizon with R, you can't get R. It becomes a paradox.
Wow. So this guy is saying that the refracted R is setting the rules for the absence of the geometric R that's supposed to be there before refraction tables are assigned to the real R.
Yeah, first you must get R by measuring R, for you then to derive an R-based refraction value that you arbitrarily assign in a Muppet Vision calculator.
Because remember, they say the geometric horizon is there, you just can't see it because of this refraction, which is 7/6R.
So you can't see
R
it.
is there, but
you
it's
can't
the
see it.
7/6R obstructing it.
So if you can't see it, you can't measure it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah?
That would be, I guess, another distinction between globers and anti-flat earthers, because National Geographic says the geometric horizon is the visible demarcation between land and sky.
Yeah, meaning we need to see it blocking boats and buildings as asserted in the Earth curve maths. Yeah, that's what a horizon is, an apparent location where the sky meets the ground or sea. That means you can see it. This horse crap of, well, our horizon that only exists in the maths which we need to be able to measure to get R, is going to be moved to a position where we can't get R, and then we're going to use the R value we can't measure anymore to move it with.
Well, what
And
about
then they want to pin it that the
Al-Biruni's
flat
dip
earthers
angle?
don't want to acknowledge that
Oh,
refraction.
hold on, Solar. Go ahead, 10th.
What about Al-Biruni's proclaimed dip angle to the measured horizon, to where they say that's how we got the circumference of the Earth and the R value? What was he looking at if it wasn't the actual geometric horizon? As
I'll
they
defer
claim?
to Flat Earth Solar. So they can't see it, so Al-Biruni can't measure it.
But he did. He did,
No, he
my
didn't.
kind sir.
No, he didn't.
According to them, he definitely observed the real geometric horizon that was being bent to an apparent location and then measured to the apparent location, which happened to be the exact geometric location, which gave him a slight variance of being really precise.
Yeah, indeed.
And
So,
then when you try
that
and
checks
make
out.
the whole 7/6R comparison, that 7/6R is the refraction they're talking about, and that can't be used, then they flat earthers are saying you can't use refraction. So that's also how they create this little net at the back end and then say, oh, you see, once again, the flat earthers are denying refraction. And we're the only ones who've been saying refraction is obviously there, but using 7/6R to define it is the error,
correct.
is the fault.
So to take the logical steps, is refraction real?
Yes.
Yes.
Is refraction 7/6 of a radius as per the refraction they assert when they move the horizon?
No.
If you had a radius, sure.
Right. That would be terrestrial refraction, globe refraction, which is not refraction. So we say, no, you're applying a refraction that relies on R and is only functioning in mathematics that isn't reality. Hey, Adam.
Afternoon, guys. So I'm just at work, so it's better than sitting on your own.
I'm glad you're here because earlier a chappie in Discord was talking about a friend of his that worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing, and he was trying to explain that a lot of the things that were being asserted about a particular medicine, which we won't detail, was not scientifically validated. And because you weren't here, I was intending to, but now you are, I will launch into either you or Dr. John D in terms of your, I don't want to say reluctance, but your comprehension of the scientific method and how it relates to some of the group methodology testing and things like that. Any chance you can humour me?
From a medicine's point of view, yeah, there's science involved, but a lot of the stuff isn't science. It's probabilities, it's likelihoods, it's outcomes. That's medicine is modern medicine, like that. You'll get to the point where there is some cause and effect relationship within that decision, but fundamentally, from a medical point of view, it's not science per se that you're doing. It's probabilities, a lot of it.
Right, there's a big distinction between establishing the cause of scurvy through a methodology-based, i.e. science, investigation, versus testing groups with controls and the placebo, and then getting the data set for which group reacted best. Things like that aren't science, but that is a lot of medicine and how it's developed.
Yeah, it doesn't fall into that category. You are, like I said, it's probability, because with science, you are looking for straight cause and effect. Unfortunately, human beings are very, very, very complicated. So you can science a little bit and talk about scurvy and talk about within the process, the biological process, and there's a bit of science in there. But actually, when we're applying it to the individual, cause and effect's a very difficult thing. You've got so many factors that you can't really science it within the human to any great assurity, if you see what I mean. What you're measuring within the human is a response. It's not necessarily a cause and effect. placebos, etc., all have effects that we can't science. So that's more how I'd certainly view the medical side of stuff. I mean, there is pharmaceutical. He said he was a pharmaceutical scientist. So within formulation, again, it's more falling into the realms of technology. There is bits of science in there, but actually the creative part is really more technology and ingenuity. And there will be stuff like the science of forming a gelatin capsule or stuff, you know, the cause and effect. If you add this to this, you will get this. So that's within that. But again, I think the majority of the pharmaceutics side isn't really science. It's, I say, a form of engineering. It's called the science of dosage form design, pharmaceutics. But again, science there meaning the knowledge of dosage form design. So not necessarily, although there is within it big chunks where that would be cause and effect, but they're the kind of axioms that you then work from. They're your building blocks, aren't they? The science that that's solid there, you then take that and use that, like I say, in more from a technology point of view. It's not directly science when you're in the lab.
Gotcha.
And I think we've taken a massive step backwards because we were just getting to the point where we were understanding that everyone's genetics are different and that there's now genetic-based medicines based on your individual profile, and you can see what allergies you have, and you find out that maybe aspirin doesn't work as well for your blood type, or, you know, that there was this customization going on, and now it's just a broad brush, everyone take the same thing and it's going to be fine.
Maybe, but I think the point moreover is that at the start of Adam, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, Adam would have said that, you know, this is all just science, all of it, all bundled together, whereas now Adam has to give a disclaimer that lasts about 2 or 3 minutes about the distinction between these various different properties within a field that he's very familiar with. Well, Dr. John Dee had to go through the same process because, without being rude, it's a magic trick that's employed by often people on our own side when we're in this realm of flat earth versus globe earth debate, which is to say that people who have trained in a profession and acquired an academic qualification within what they thought was science aren't going to be willing, and I'm not saying this is necessarily Adam, to give that up. They want to use the magic trick because it has a lot of weight when you make an assertion. You're a scientist. Well, therefore, you're the guy with the white cap that tells me what's what and what you say goes. Even if it doesn't necessarily actually have any science attached and is merely correlation based. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that the medicine doesn't work. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying it's not science. And Adam, I hope, would now completely and wholeheartedly agree with me. Please do so, please God.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think from an ego point of view, it's like I said, John kicked me in the nuts when we met that time. It's not so much arrogance that you'd want to deny it, but actually it's all science, and it's not until you bother to distinguish and go back to your true definitions that you maybe appreciate where the science is and where it isn't. But we would have been happy to just stick that science label on it. I'm a scientist. I mean, medicine's probably a little different in that we accept that it's not an exact thing like science would be. So we're probably, as medics, a little easier to make that jump or recognize that.
Is that why you guys call it a medical practice?
Yeah, well, give it a go.
Literally practicing.
I'm trying really hard. But I think they're probably harder within like John Dee's discipline, where everything he did would be science as far as he's concerned. So I said, but within medicine, we have things, cost benefits, and we appreciate that decisions we're making aren't necessarily science. They're probability, they're outcome based, they're practice experience based. Yeah. Whereas I think if you go to something more lab based, like what John was, I think in his head before being challenged, yeah, everything he was doing, even when he made a cup of tea in the lab, it was still science because he's a scientist in a lab. You know,
That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Very, very, very challenging. So me, humble Joe Normie, challenging PhD, highly specialised in his field, that what he's saying is wrong. No, it's not science. And me saying that to a friendly, it's like, who the hell am I to tell him that? But I had to. I had no option. And I knew it. And it was very difficult. And I went to QE and was like, what am I going to do about it? And as much as QE wanted to say, oh, it'll be all right, it was like, no, that's just the way it's got to be. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, it's wonderful when you're chopping off the heads of globe believers or anti-flat earthers with their lack of adherence to the scientific method. But when it comes to your own side, it's easier, I won't lie, when it's someone like Bob Nodell, because he's not a PhD with a specialist field that is, you know, the authority when it comes to quote unquote science. He's utilising the magic trick, and me pointing that out to him is something that I have had to do with various other flat earthers. It's just far more difficult when the person that knows he's gone through his education and has got his authority to say, no, this is science. I am a scientist and you are not. Which we get from the Globers all the time, right? Like I say, very difficult to chop that head off, which is what I had to do. I'll rephrase it from chopping head off. Kick him in the balls, which is what Adam described it as. It's kicking the balls for Adam when he's like, my science this, my science that. And then suddenly, no, actually, maybe not. Have you actually assessed the scientific validity of this? Can you stop using that as a magic trick, please? And you go, but when I said it, people really went wide-eyed and respected me for it. You know, that's a hard thing to give up.
Can I say something in a simplistic way that I think help me understand it?
You can, but just
I
after
look at
Adam, just after Adam's
Yeah.
reaction to that, because I've talked about him specifically. So can you just react first in case I got anything wrong?
No, you're spot on. So I think medicine's a little lucky in that we don't necessarily lose our kudos when we admit that large portions of the profession aren't science being practiced. But I think it's for the rest out there, like John, it's something you have to accept. It's not like in a bitter way, but it's something you have to accept to give you back the validation of science. It's to remind you what science actually means, what it brings, and what it confirms and what it doesn't. And it's just recognizing those differences. It doesn't have to be like, say, soul destroying or ego destroying or reputation removal. It has much more validity when used correctly. And I think that was what me and Dr. John kind of come out the other side of. Actually, yeah, all right, everything we ain't doing is science, yeah, but now we are standing there with much better validity when we use the term science and it means something, and just to not misuse it is the benefit. Like I say, it helps you destroy ballers, it helps attack other things, but getting that comprehension strengthens you in the long run, even if it does weaken your ego a little.
But people do it all the time.
Do you think?
Occasionally, find this will bleed into whatever research I'm doing. So previously acoustic treatment, now it's microphones. So I'm looking at buying a new microphone, and I came across the channel recently. I subscribed to him actually because I thought it was very funny. But he's assessing people and their habits of, you know, buying things like as a hobbyist. You know, constantly buying stuff and accumulating crap, and he's kind of nitpicking at those people and saying, you know, you should just buy the right thing and not have a load of crap lying around. That was his main point. But initially, he was like, do you ignore the scientific evidence of the equipment in favour of what it looks like? You know, he's pretending to be a doctor as he's doing this video. But my comment to him was like, do you believe that measuring stuff is scientific evidence? Because that's a misapprehension, and this guy knows his stuff. He knows all of the charts, he knows every mic measurement, headphone measurement, he knows the frequency response, he knows what the dips in the frequency response are going to do to the sound and how it's going to be perceived by you as the listener. Very educated about measurements and how they relate in an abstract way by way of his description to sound. Very difficult thing to do, describing sound, hard thing to do, but he does it well. But he thinks it's science because he knows his stuff. So suddenly he needs a bit of extra validity. I want to distinguish myself from somebody who just goes and looks at a mic chart a frequency response and start showing it and talking about it like they know what they're talking about. Me, I've studied this. I'm talking from his perspective. I've studied this. Therefore, I need something a little extra to make it clear to my audience that I know what I am talking about. And that word in that instance was science, because it lends credence to what you're claiming. If you can assert it with some dogged assurance that you've done the measurements well, with good equipment that are accurate, then it's science. No, it bloody isn't. It's just good measurements. Being diligent doesn't make you scientific. That's my rant over.
Why can't they just say he's a specialist in it? Why do they have to say science? I don't get it.
Because sometimes this, as I've just explained, another example, when I was doing acoustic treatment and there's another guy that was doing null testing. And a null test is where you take a signal into a piece of measuring equipment, and then if you've recorded from it or you're using a device that you compare to it, you simply invert the signal and see what's left. In other words, if it self-cancels completely, nulls, you're left with nothing. If you've got something still residual in the signal, that's the distortion that you're looking for to compare it to. So null testing is a very good way of showing the differences between things where there's distortion, etc., etc., etc. Now, this guy has got 10 grand's worth of measuring equipment for doing this. And he's got boxes that he's developed himself. He's physically developed null testing boxes of his own design to do this. So therefore it's science, so he says. They just don't get the science, these people who talk about listening tests. They don't get the science. No, there is no science. There's a good comprehension of acoustics. There's a good understanding of air velocity. There's a good understanding of reflective components within rooms. There's a good understanding of how transmission works and how transmission losses are occurred and how distortion occurs. But these things are all just measurements. Understanding, good logic, not science. But for that guy who spent his entire lifetime dedicated to this stuff, to debunk people who are out there with gold-plated connectors, right, and show them as charlatans and snake oil salesmen, more power to you, mate. But that guy just needs that little bit of extra something that distinguishes him from the guy who's just doing a listening test. Well, he's doing a listening test just with very, very, very good equipment that shows it on a readout and gives you numbers for it. It's just listening, though, isn't it? It's just listening and measuring and putting it into numbers. Doesn't make it science. That's my point.
Nathan, doesn't the word science mean knowledge?
No, it's contextual. That's an etymological fallacy. Just because the etymology of the word science means knowledge, scientia, in Latin, doesn't mean that that's the contextual meaning in today's vernacular. The current meaning of science would be to test by experiment. If you're talking about the arena that we are actually in, that's natural science, not computer science. It's just nonsense. Cause and effect within the natural world, that's natural science, and it's defined. Not the etymology, the definition. To test by experiment, that's science.
But that's my very point. So you have, hang on, that's my very point. You have knowledge, science, but then we have the knowledge of the method, the scientific method for cause and effect. That's a strict discipline in itself. If you want to take the word science and say it just means knowledge and apply it to measurements, that's a different thing than to say it's a method that will show you the cause and effect of something from the natural world.
Contextually, when people say science or use scientific vernacular like experiment or hypothesis, they are using it to imply empiricism. Now, of the etymological fallacy use of the word science in terms of knowledge, where's the empiricism? Oh, there isn't any. Oh, right. So what use is it? Why not just say knowledge? I know this because I've run a ruler down it. That's no problem. I've not got an issue with that. But contextually, the reason the word's being used when a man's made a good measurement is because it needs the implication of empiricism. And what gives you empiricism when you're talking about science? The scientific method. Because of the null, like I explained on the live show. If A, then B. That's an alternative hypothesis. A will cause B. That's your prediction. A hypothesis is a prediction. If A, not B, is the antithesis of your prediction, I think it's going to cause it is my prediction. I think it's not going to cause it is the complete opposite. And they sit side by side in that method. That's a hypothesis. Observe natural phenomena, formulate hypothesis, that's your cause and effect reasoning, your supposition of cause being the IV, your phenomena that you're studying be the DV, the CVs we don't need to cover, just everything you keep constant, everything else other than the effect you're trying to cause and the thing that you're varying. That's a hypothesis. When you've got a null, then you test it. And one or other will be proven, as I just detailed on the live show. Well, that one or other will be proven is the empirical bit. The only reason you'd want to say science when you're doing maths is to imply that aspect of science, the empiricism. And you only get that by the method, not by, well, I know this, it's knowledge, the etymological definition is blah, blah. No. The method gives you empiricism. That's why when you say you've measured something accurately, you're going to say that it's empirical. And use a word like experiment when you've tested something by way of measurement rather than hypothesis test.
Can I maybe simplify this in my mind and see if I get it right? Chemical reaction and sound can be argued that they're natural phenomenon because you hear sound in nature and you see chemical reaction occurring in nature through biology or whatever means. The scientific aspect of that would, well, what's the cause of the sound or what's the cause of the chemical reaction? We had established that we'll do this and that causes this sound, or we do this and that, and it creates this chemical reaction. The next step is, well, how much of that, which would be quantifying it, putting into a number to say, this is how much of this sound or how much of this will cause this or that or the other.
No,
and the next step is after.
Stop.
Hold on.
Well, you're wrong. Not how much.
Or if you want a certain result, like I'm saying, okay, once you decide that this is a reaction or this is the sound you want to produce, you determine how much or what you want to do to create a certain thing or whatever you want to do with that reaction or that sound.
No.
Well, the final step in my mind would be the technology side of it. Once you know the cause, quantify it, put a number to it, then you can actually use technology to develop it and make something out of it.
No. Yes, you can, but that's
no?
No. So, yes, you can quantify it, but that quantification isn't the method that establishes the cause. So if you're saying DV, sound, IV, something vibrating, vibration, yeah? So then you've got a cause and effect. You vibrate something, you see if it causes the sound. Right, okay, so you've validated your alternative. If vibration, then sound waves. Or whatever you want to then qualify it with in terms of the description and how many and frequency. That you can do, but the derivation thereafter is just your way of describing it. The abstraction in maths, how many cycles per second? Yeah? That is irrelevant to whether or not you've actually got the cause of the effect. The chemical reaction, the same thing applies. If X, then Y. If this, then that chemical reaction will occur.
Well, I mean, I guess I was saying in a biological sense. I mean, just using the biology as an example, I guess I'm maybe confusing quantitative and qualitative.
Correct.
So maybe I'm confusing the two. Okay, that'll be fine. Then I'll say like a toxin, like something of poison in the environment, which is natural. Maybe a small amount is not going to affect anything, but we know it does have an effect. So we want to determine how much of that poison will affect the biological system. That's a quantitative. How much it's going to determine that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do, but the reason I've stopped you...
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I've stopped you is because that's where the danger comes. Because if I give you my example with the boiling water, you come across a hot spring, what causes that water to boil? And then you say, well, let's concern ourselves with the qualitative aspect of my assumed cause that's yet to be validated. I.e., you mistake the hypothesis for an explanation, ignore the null. Just if A, then B. But if you haven't validated and you start worrying about the quantitative aspects of how much acid quantity in the water will cause the boiling, and you go, well, if I put a lot in, it'll boil a lot faster. A lot more acid, a lot more boiling water, right? but you haven't actually established the cause yet. You're just looking at how much. So if you look at it slightly differently and say, well, heat, well, once you figured out that that is actually going to be the cause of that effect, you can, after the fact, qualify it however you like, mathematically, verbally, whatever you want. But you know what's caused it. Quantitatively, it doesn't matter at that point.
Well, I mean, it's like a stove. You know, you can say heat causes boiling water, but you want to determine, if you want to create a technology, how much heat you need to produce to create the boiling water on a stove. That's kind of where I'm going. We know heat causes boiling water. We know that, or atmospheric pressure as a factor. We know that, but we want to know how much heat does my stove need to create to boil water in whatever in certain environments. So, but that's technology. It's just developing a technology, knowing. I guess it's sometimes figure out the steps from knowing the cause and effect to developing technology.
Exactly.
I'm trying to make it simple.
No, precisely. So if you're going to figure out that heat causes things to cook, yeah, and then you want to then, just to make this example easy, you then figure out with technology how much heat you need to apply in an oven for how long. You know, that it doesn't make your cooking process science. It merely makes your application of your understanding that heat is going to cook the thing that you're using or produce steam, whatever you're going to use as the methodology. Yes, to know that that's going to happen, you needed a bit of science first, but thereafter, building the oven isn't science, or putting the chicken in the oven and putting a bit of water in there with it to make it steamy, that isn't science either.
Okay,
You
cool.
guys don't
That's all I
science your
wanted.
dinner every day.
Say again, chocolate?
So what, you guys don't science your dinner every day?
I think the first caveman might have scienced his dinner. This animal died and fell in the fire, and it seems to taste better after I cook it.
If you can't take the heat, chocolate, stay out of my kitchen.
Chocolate melts at body temperature. That's why it's so yummy.
I just want to get clarity on what you guys are talking about. So in the boiling water and heat causing it, like that's the scientific part of it. So yeah, you guys are saying like, okay, heat causes the boiling water, but how? Like, I just want to clarify this because I'm trying to think about it. I can apply heat to it, but it doesn't boil the water because it's not hot enough. So the heat doesn't cause it in that situation. See what I'm saying? I'm just confused by what you guys are saying.
It depends how closely you look. Obviously, you're not boiling puddles, but they're still disappearing, aren't they?
I think this is back where was it quantitative?
Took the words out of my mouth.
I'm messing up all the time.
Yeah, keep going. Yes, I was just about to say, go on, Paul. You're exactly right.
Like, I can take a drop of water, I can turn my stove on, or even a fire, and I can flick some water on it, and it'll pretty much almost boil instantaneously, and it'll go away very rapidly. The same effect is in a play. It's heat and boiling. But if I put a pot of water on the stove or whatever, that's going to take longer because there's more of it, you know. And so the time duration from one temperature to another temperature is going to be longer to get it to where it needs to be. So does that make sense? But heat's still the factor in both.
Exactly. Once you've got the cause, you take that exact same explanation and substitute heat for acid. Suddenly, it doesn't matter about the quantities anymore, right? All that matters is that you've got the cause of the effect. After the fact, you can worry about how much heat to apply, or at a very, very small level, a microscopic level, you can describe how that reaction happens in a puddle just from the sun coming overhead. But that's quantitative as opposed to qualitative.
Ultimately, just boiling water is a phase change, and phase change happens at different states or different. Like, phase change can happen even in a solid state, you know, or it can happen in a liquid state. So it can happen either way. And you get into the exact cause of the phase change. That should be another question.
Well, looking at phase change in terms of how that occurs in terms of a cause and effect relationship is also something that can go through the method. But that would be you expanding out on your original knowledge that you've acquired, if you want to keep it within the etymological fallacy used early by 10th man. You can establish that and then move on with a theory. So once you've got scientific validity to a cause and effect relationship, that's when you expand upon it. That's where theory comes. It comes after experiment. Another word that's used because it's a magic word. Well, our theory of gravity, what? So this is scientifically validated cause and effect reasoning that then had a theory after the fact. No, the theory comes first for them because it's just a magic word. In science, you do your establishment of cause and then the theory comes.
What about, this is confusing for me too, because this is thrown around a lot these days because of what's going on. You're saying a certain thing causes the effect. So the effect is that people are getting sick all over the world, they say. That's the effect. And then the cause is this thing. But then they're also saying that if you inject this thing into you in a little amount, it actually stops the effect. That's really confusing to my brain when I'm thinking about science and how I've learned it from you guys. Like the cause is also the not cause. It's also the null.
I don't think that they say that you won't catch it, because they've said that even if you were to take the medicine, you still would be able to contract something. But your point's valid. Like, how can catching something make you sick, and then how can injecting that something into you not?
Okay, look, I think I'm going to paraphrase the question so it's not us beating around the bush talking about this. You're asking if there's scientific validity to a cause and effect relationship in regards to vaccines for certain boogeymen viruses, whatever they may be. Yeah? Well, that's something you can look into. So that's something you can ask about. That's something you can inquire about. Is there scientific validity to the assertion being made? And if the assertion is a cause and effect relationship, then it definitely falls within the remit of science. If there's an effect they're saying, normally think of the steps that we take here. These are directly translatable. First, establish what the effect is. What is the effect that we're studying exactly? And if it seems to turn out that there isn't actually an effect to study, that puts the anchors on it immediately. Yeah? But if there is actually an effect, you can say, okay, it seems a naturally occurring phenomena that we are experiencing. Can science help? Absolutely it can. You can suppose the cause of that effect. And you can vary and manipulate your presumed cause of the effect and see if it causes the effect. Then you know the cause of the effect. That's what science does. And if they don't have any, you can go, I don't want to trust this because it's not empirically validated. Now, I'm not saying in any circumstances with any medicine that they are or are not. That is down to you to research and ask the question. Does this have scientific validity? It's easy enough to ask. Or if nobody's giving you the answers because they don't know, it's easy enough to research.
Right. You just
Not
ask,
so easy
okay,
to
where's
find.
the medical literature? Where's the actual PubMed data, right? Well, if you're going to ask that or look for that about this particular thing that's going around in the last year, you'll find that every claim ever made about this supposed medicine is completely unsubstantiated and not even tested.
Hold on. No. That's not what I'm suggesting that you do. Carte blanche statements like that.
Hold
on, Arwin. Hold on. Right. There have been many occasions where I've been in a position where I've had to take medicine. One of them rather recently. I had a massive infection in my jaw and I ended up having to go get medicine. And in almost every single instance, be it the dentist, the doctor, the pharmacist, they have always been willing to sit down and detail specific ingredients, science that they have or haven't got, how the medicine came to fruition, and they're always exceptionally knowledgeable. These people are experts. Your doctor, your pharmacist, your dentist, they are there to be asked these questions. And I guarantee they want to be asked them because they like answering them. That's their job. So just ask the question. Now, if you don't like the answers, it's obviously up to you to make an informed decision. That's what you do as a person. Now, some people will go in and do things, medical procedures, plastic surgery, without any of that. And more power to them. No, some people want ignorance and they don't want to know. Just give me this and it'll solve that. Great. You say it will solve that, or I don't even want to ask if it will solve it. I think it'll solve it, so I'm going to do it. Well, those people are idiots, and they haven't made an informed decision. And sometimes they might have been pressured into making that decision by whoever, for whatever reason. But that is ultimately down to you to make an informed decision based on research. And if your standard is scientific, and you feel that the cause and effect relationship that you have got a question about needs to be validated by way of empirical evidence, then that's your standard. You adhere to whatever you feel is your standard. It's entirely up to you.
Okay, I agree with that, but that's like a personal physiology related issue, and of course you want to ask somebody that studied medicine and did all the work to study it to help you out, give you good tips, and I'm all totally for that. I'm talking about, however, a specific product that no doctor knows anything about, so it seems, because when they do, then they're not very pushy about it.
Well, that's not true.
But Arwen, isn't that normal though? I mean, most doctors only know what they learned in school in a book. Just like we talk about when it comes to school education. It's the same thing. I'm not saying that we don't need doctors, and if you don't break your arm, you have to go to the hospital, or you don't need surgery, you know, that's really important. But when you're talking about vaccinations, most of the doctors that you're going to speak about or speak to, excuse me, have no clue what the heck they're giving you. They're going by whatever they've been told. Who do we speak to about this is the problem to get the right answers. You're
That's just not
trusting
true.
authority.
It's just not
That
true.
was my point.
Well, it's just not true. I've spoken to a pharmacist about vaccinations on multiple occasions for both me and my children. And don't get me wrong, there's been exceptions to this, but on the whole, they've been very forthcoming. They've told me and they've known. And if they haven't, they've made it a point to go and find out and come back to me. So I just don't agree with this. Have either of you, was it Stacey or Arwen, before I round out, have either of you ever quizzed a physician or a pharmacist on vaccinations ever?
Yeah.
Yes, actually I have. Yeah.
Well, that pisses on
Yeah.
my bonfire.
That's right.
You
Well, the
maybe
point
just
is
have a good
they're
one.
going to give you the information.
Well, I have an
that
Hold
they
on,
have
one at a
on
time.
you.
Hold on, I had
Personal
Stacey.
example.
Hello, I had Stacey first. Go ahead, Stacey.
I'm just saying you're right. They're going to give you information, right? But that information that they have is what they've been told or they've read in a pamphlet. And so it doesn't mean that the information that they are receiving or giving you at this point is correct. And you can go back to, and I won't go into it fully, the whole Monsanto thing. They lie about studies. They can do this through multiple organizations. And so who do we trust is the point.
You do your
And
own
this is
research.
something,
That's
these
what I've
new
said.
vaccinations that they're calling vaccinations aren't really vaccinations. It's totally
I agree.
different.
Okay, I agree. In
Can I?
principle, we're dealing with this day in, day out. I could just take that logic with globe Earth and say, look, I've done a Google search, therefore Earth's a sphere. I get what you're saying, and I did try and preface it by saying it's down to you and your own diligence. You and your own research, and the standard that you set is your own choice, right? I just want to get Arwen's opinion, and then hopefully Adam will put in the last word before I round out. Go ahead, Arwen.
Right. Well, a lot of doctors out there, there's very little doctors that are actually really focused on vaccines that much, right?
God.
They get no, but that's a fact.
No, it's not. It's just a sweeping generalization. Please stop.
It's that.
No,
oh,
stop.
so I can't. Oh, thanks. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm not going to allow this. That's
Immediately
not fair.
interrupt me.
Please. No, because you're making a sweeping generalization and then just declaring it as fact. It's totally unreasonable. No, I'm not
I was
going
going
to
to be more specific though, but you interrupted me.
Good.
Yeah. In general, there's very few doctors that actually specialize in general in vaccines that are practicing doctors that have patients all of the time. In reality, that doesn't really happen, but they do get notified about it through magazines, through others, and there's a lot of rewards or promised, profits that could come with it, and one might get seduced into doing that more than the other, right?
Fine.
But there's
Yes,
very
you're right.
few doctors that
No, okay.
actually know the details out
Yes,
there
I
in
agree.
the field.
Yes, there is incentives that are provided by pharmaceutical companies. That's fairly common knowledge. Thank you, Arwen. Adam, are you still there?
Yeah, I've just been in and out doing science this afternoon. But
Is that so? Do you have the last word on this?
I will add to that. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I think, certainly from my point of view, you can, in any walk of life, be ignorant and not bother to find out. But certainly, if any of my patients asks me and I'm not sure, I haven't bothered to research, then I go away and find it out. Now, the training isn't to be a sheep and just receive a leaflet. One of the things we never let our students do is work from reps, information sheets that they give to doctors. Yeah, when we do something, we do it on proper clinical data, and we find out, yeah, and we use our critical thinking to come to a conclusion, which in most cases is to either advise a patient or advise another prescriber. So you have to be able to go into that. And I think the majority of course, if it's not your field, you're not necessarily going to know about it. But I think certainly most of the medics that I've come across are aware of what's going off. And that's why a lot of medics might maybe aren't administering to themselves and their family.
Well, on that bombshell, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!